Good morning from the West Coast, where Chris and I are, and good afternoon if you're on the East Coast or wherever you are, or if you're listening to this post-recording. My name's Anthony Green. I'm your host again for Surf Sessions episode 8 today. Super excited to introduce and welcome Chris Joseph. Chris is the founder and CMO at Wyld. You've probably heard of Wyld. They're kind of a popular edible company around the country. Chris, welcome. Thank you. Great to have you here.
Yeah, no, thanks for thinking of us and for inviting us.
Well, we love you guys. I'm sure a lot of the people tuning in do as well. Christine and I took a bunch of Wyld back to Australia recently for friends and family when we popped back as well, which were extremely well received because Australia is way behind where America is in terms of cannabis. So they were readily consumed and much enjoyed. So yeah, we love your product for sure. Chris, again, you're the founder, you're the CMO at Wyld. You've been at this since 2016 or earlier. What else would you like to tell us about yourself before we kick off and get into the questions?
No, I think that's been in the industry since really formed in Oregon, and happy to give you some background in the Oregon market too, if you'd like. But it's hard to think that we entered the stage in 2016 as well, and the market back then was it was a lot of the issues that we saw back then are still things that we see, but it's definitely evolved from there. But yeah, the market was just forming back then, and there wasn't really a national market at that time. We were one of the first edible markets, and that's what excited me. I started my background in spirits back in 2012, 2013. I was 21, 22 years old. And when cannabis became legal, that's what excited me. It's not every day you can be a part of an industry that's forming or legalizing for the first time. So that's why I really wanted to jump in, wanted to be more of a trailblazer in that sense and pave my way in that.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you've seen it evolve because I'm only 4 years in, and I think I've seen a little evolution as well, but I think all of us would like to see maybe a faster evolution. But Chris, let's start sort of at the beginning. You mentioned some of this here, but you are a Portland or Oregon boy. You're up there right now today. You've come up initially, as you mentioned, through the Bev Alc space, and obviously you still play in that space. We'll talk a little bit more later on about that. Starting though, and looking through the cannabis lens and focusing on Wyld here, you're the founder of the company. You're a Pacific Northwest company, as you've mentioned. You've since expanded nationally. What can you tell us about the early days of 2016? What was the Oregon market like? What was the national market like? And maybe you could touch on one or two of these points you've mentioned of what has evolved in that time.
Yeah. Back in 2016, it from the Oregon market, again, like I said, it was really just forming, and national market wasn't really necessarily a thing, but everything was hard, a lot harder than it necessarily has to be. I think people overlook some of the struggles that we had to deal with and still do have to deal with. And some of that's like regulations changed fast, and they still do. And packaging requirements change fast. So me coming from spirits, I'm used to being able to buy a year's worth of supply, right? You can buy a year's worth of glass or labels, and you can rely on those rules likely not changing in the snap of a finger. But in cannabis, that did happen, right? So you have a lot of wasted cost on packaging from regulations changing pretty quickly. Infrastructure and supply chain was inconsistent at best, and the access to resources was limited and difficult. But also like those traditional vendors, like I said, from a spirit side, I was used to being able to source from numerous different suppliers for glass or corks or corrugated boxes. And there really wasn't that many vendors that would want to work with cannabis companies at that time. It put them at risk. Taking cannabis money, they can limit their or jeopardize their insurance or just their business. So those resources were pretty limited, even down to like where we could produce. Right, you can't just go rent a facility and start producing there. And I think the most obvious one that we still have some challenges with is access to banking and capital. That's definitely some of the issues that we've faced. But the market back then was also, there wasn't that many brands. We were one of the first ones there, and back then some of the competition is what I would call black bag red devils. or sandwich bags with a sticker on it. And there wasn't anything that truly felt authentic or real. And for me, that's where we saw a lot of opportunity. And at Wyld, we built it around quality, consistency, branding, and education. And one of our goals was really to make it approachable. Stigma's high, right? Like you go around and people really openly saying, I consume cannabis. We would do farmers markets and you would see groups of people come by and it would just be a CBD stand too, right? And people look at it, kind of side-eyed it and walk away, but then you'd have one customer come run back and quickly give you 20 bucks or so to try to buy some edibles. But you know, it was more the closet consumer stage of that. And so I looked at it as like, how do you make it more approachable? And I didn't come from, you know, cannabis. I actually didn't consume cannabis until I really started Wyld. And so for me, I looked at it, I'm like, what would I want to know? Like, what would I want to see out of packaging? And, you know, coming from that more conservative upbringing, how do I tell my mom? How do I sell to a product to my mom? How do I sell it to a soccer mom or my grandma? So a lot of our actually packaging and a lot of our marketing materials and point of sale was to think of those consumers, and make it approachable. And I think we were very effective in doing that. And, you know, a lot of people have this story of having that bad brownie. And that's why they don't do edibles. So how do you make a product that's consistent and reliable and consumers know what to expect? And, you know, we took a lot of those marketing ideas and route to market and applied it to other states, which is what made us successful. But, you know, what's evolved from Oregon from back then, I think it was heavy on just getting product to the stores and educating them, giving them basic flyers to how do you activate those stores more? How do you show up more? And that's where we've evolved and we've built a great trade team and are able to show up to accounts and support them in more meaningful ways than just dropping off deliveries too. So I think that's one way that's evolved. Product offerings has certainly evolved. And some of that is because of the consumers. Consumers are understanding that point of occasion, they're understanding what they like, whether it's price per milligram, solventless or distillate products, they're understanding more of what they want, which is diversifying the offerings and creating innovation too. So it's been exciting, but Oregon has definitely gone from, I mean, really just trying to figure things out and bootstrap it and grassroot it to having structure and being able to work within that.
Well, mate, you're a true Oregon success story for sure. Hopefully you're celebrated in that regard up there as a business that's started there and gone national. I love Good Tide as well because I know it's right behind you, but I love that it's vegan and it's so clean and real fruit. And you've just got such great products that match so many different types of consumers. To your point, when we gave to like my nieces versus my sister-in-law versus my brothers, everyone looks at the packaging and immediately is like just so excited. And I know in Australia we have almost nothing to compare it to, but even here, the product really stands out. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you.
Chris, in terms of being, so you're founder, you're also the CMO. The CMO in a big CPG company or a big retailer, you know, people can pretty much define easily or relatively easily what that person's job description is going to be. At Wyld, the reality for you, I assume, is probably a little bit different in terms of where you spend your time and energy. I know you've got a great team, you're building a bigger digital team, but where do you as CMO, right? There's a lot of tenets to being a CMO. Where are you spending your time and your energy right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think it depends on what day you ask me and what problem we face. But
what's today? Wednesday. All right, Wednesday's answer.
You know, but largely I think it is mostly what you would expect out of a traditional CMO role. And that's been more so of lately, right? Like if you asked me a couple years ago, we didn't have a marketing department. So it was more of, you know, we have customers asking for point of sales material. How do we get it out as fast as we can? So we created a marketing department, what we called, and that was really just producing assets and being more of a production team. So we went from more of a production marketing department to being in more of a backseat, I should say, to how do you get into the front seat of the car and starting to think of some innovation and helping guide some of those decisions to this year. It's really, and going forward is how do you create more of the marketing department? How do you get sales and marketing to merge together to where we're actually in the driver's seat? And you have to understand what the market wants, what consumers want, and be able to help be a driver for growth. So a lot of what I do personally is a lot of those forward thinking initiatives and innovation. So one of those is actually our Delta 9 line. That's new. That's new for us. We launched our gummies late last year, and we're launching our beverages now and doing traditional distribution. So that's where I get to utilize some of my skill sets and background of your typical distribution to bring our beverages THC to the traditional market. So growth and structural elements is where I spend my time. So growth from a brand, but structure internally, and how do I set both the brand and our company and our employees up for success. Now, what fuels me and what gives me energy and where I spend that energy and what fills it back up is actually what Wyld stands for, and that's much more than edibles, and it always has been, right? So to me, what success would look like is when people think of Wyld, of course, they think of the fantastic and consistent and high quality products we produce, but also that we're much more than that. We're much more than edibles in itself, and I think it really showcases in our core values. You see some of it. You'll see the 2024 report coming out here in a couple of weeks, but our impact reports that we put it out in 22 and 23, and we'll put it out in 24, and it really ties into our core values. How does Wyld be more than just edibles? We have to make an impact. Like success, I truly believe there's responsibility in that, and we have to better and we have to improve the world that we work and live within and make a better environment for tomorrow. So that's what fuels me up and gives me energy is, the entrepreneur hat of checking the box of making sure the business is running. That's one thing, but like the crazy entrepreneur that has a dream and a mission of bettering the world, that's what fuels me up.
Mate, I love that. And how do you make sure the consumer understands that brand story as well? Like, what are the tenets to, being beyond just a really great product that people enjoy and get a great feeling from and come back and buy again? How do you let them also understand what the business stands for and the company stands for?
I think some of it is those impact reports that we put out through digital. And it's really how we show up. I was a big believer in we have to walk before we talk, and we can't just promote, hey, we checked this one box and look at us. So we didn't really come out with a lot of the marketing side of what we do for quite some time. And part of it is that authentic nature of us. Most of what we do is not for publicity or for advertising. It's because we truly believe in those elements, like sustainability and fighting the war on drugs, and environmental support, and much more. Like we truly believe in creating a better environment for that. So we show up, of course, and let consumers know through our marketing and initiatives, and whether it's digital or print. But people see us, right? Like it's not uncommon for you to see us show up at different community events and support.
Awesome. Looking forward to seeing the report. You said next week it's coming out?
Should be coming out next couple of weeks. Yeah.
Next couple of weeks. Awesome. Look forward to it. So, mate, you've done an amazing job with the expansion. You're in 16 states now. East Coast, huge push. Obviously, you're not alone in that regard with those exciting new markets over there that have opened and are opening up, New York and Ohio and co. At Surfside, we often say every state, tells its own story because we operate across them all, and some are, in different stages than others. So for you, being in 16 states where you've got brand new and much more legacy and everything in between, what are the things that you see tend to differ in terms of your approach to marketing? And then give us a sense of what's working and maybe some things that you've tried that maybe didn't work.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, looking at it from like a business owner, but also from a marketing angle, every state has its own rules and has its own timelines and retailer dynamics. So nothing is truly like copy and paste. Consumers are different as well. You have your West Coast conservatives versus, Northeast, which we're starting to experience and learn more about now too. So how we communicate with customers needs to be different, should be different. And how retailers actually work and how we can be successful in them is changing and evolving too really quickly. When you look at the West Coast, when we started, all of our investment dollars for trying to grow the brand through trade was actually through bud tender education. We were very focused on them so they could do their job better too and educate consumers and sell our products. with the Northeast, we've quickly realized, and through our expansion more east, is the importance of digital.
Mm.
And that is our biggest investment as a company going forward, is really showing up digitally, and how you communicate with customers through that, through the menus there. And some of that's how the stores are set up from an infrastructure perspective, but also that's also has to do with how the consumers want to see your brand and how they do see your brand. So that's been different for us. We've had to adjust and build that muscle for a company. But other than that, one thing that we've tried to stay on is being consistent with our branding, with our product quality, with our messaging. And it is changing when we expand Northeast, because we do have to rely on digital to make sure that that's able to be consistent.
Yeah, I 2 episodes ago, we had Roman on from Jars down Arizona from the retail side. And he was talking not dissimilarly. Obviously, it's one of the reasons we want to have these conversations is there is a shift to digital, and we're trying to help other brands and retailers understand what to do, how to do it, first steps to take. And he was talking about, obviously, they're a very successful retailer in Arizona. There's still plenty of your product down there. But he was talking about just that competition for eyeballs and competition for attention on the screen
Yeah.
is maybe even more intense and short than it is even in the store with the bud tenders. And so that investment in digital and making sure that you're covering off both sides, right? Because there's the digital customer, there's the in-store customer, and there's the customer that browses online and comes in store, right? So the two worlds do combine as well. So it's very interesting to hear that. And obviously, I want to dig in with you on the digital piece here. So what are you seeing in online sales then for your products in, by state or by retail partner? You just alluded to the Northeast is more digital than maybe the West Coast, but can you elaborate a bit further on that?
And that's quickly changing too on a national level. We've just most notably seen it in the Northeast too, but we're seeing a strong performance in online sales and conversions across all retailer partners too. And our approach to digital has been looking at it more long term. We really test the market and the opportunity first, and we scale based off performance.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we're always looking at ways to evolve that. But we're taking more of a slow approach. But for example, we're now live with Commerce Media in Michigan, Mass, and New York, and it's been great. It's been great to see the ROI on that. It's across 52 different retail partners, and it's growing quick. And I'd say our engagement's up almost 2 times the industry average through that, and it's been a really good positive return for that. You mix that with more of our saturation rate from Wyld, from the retailers, and it gives us a lot of opportunity. So I think the combination of that is exciting for us, but also gives us confidence to put in more investment into that.
Mate, I love that. And just quickly on the retailers, because there's so many, you have so many across so many states. Can you give us just a sense for any folks listening in, like what are you looking for? What's the top 1, 2, or 3 things that you look for, or that your best retail partners provide to you in collaboration with you? Like what are the core things that are important to make sure that they're succeeding in selling your product and everyone's making their margin?
Yeah, I think it's just really having a transparent conversation of what works and doesn't work, and what do they need from a partner like us. And we want to be that partners that's able to provide help and support with that. So, things that I like to see is like what products are selling. Just fundamentally, like is there a certain milligram dosage? Is there a certain flavor? And try to understand more of the age groups and the consumer demographics, so we can better provide improved digital assets and marketing materials for them too. And for our future innovation, how do we adapt and pivot to be able to fit those needs? So I think the transparency of partners and retailers, we want to know like what keeps them up at night. How can we improve their business? How can Wyld improve? And so I like to see that. I also like to see the different real estate they have, right? So
Yep.
show me where we can put Wyld, and how can we make that look better within your store? And I think those are the most dynamic pieces that I look at. And then what else can we do to activate? How can we help product move in your store? And I'd say traditionally that was doing events or showing up and having some of our team there and educate. But now the fastest growing part that we're seeing is digital. Like they'll say it too, how do we create better digital assets that catch eyes for customers? And the partners that I've found that we have the most success with are the ones that truly know their customers, so they can guide us into making that material.
Man, I love that. I'm going to shout out our good friends at Planet 13, talking about real estate, maybe one of the better located dispensaries in the country. Love those guys and love that place, and a customer of ours, full disclosure. They are doing some work with you at the moment where you guys are really leaning in with them. I mean, I assume they're a very transparent partner, and you folks are going to be not only having your ads on the Planet 13 e-commerce menu, but you're doing some other advertising just to drive tourists and locals in Las Vegas into Planet 13 to buy Wyld products. And that's what we love. We love seeing when the brands and retailers really come together to drive these co-marketing efforts to make sure that product's selling through. So that's a cool example, I think, of exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. We try to be partners in it holistically, and a lot of it is trying to find out what works from their end too.
Yeah, awesome. So we touched on this earlier, Chris. You started really in the bev alc space, and then you got into the cannabis space, and now you have a foot in both camps. We could set up, and I'd love to at some point, set up a whole other discussion about that space, because that's another area that Surfside now is very active in, but we'll stick mostly in the cannabis lane today. What have you seen in the market shift right now from, call it the hemp-derived THC space versus the traditional regular products? We talked a bit about it before we came on live. So some of those remarks and just some thoughts around the shift and the opaqueness now really between cannabis and bev alc.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a shift happening, and it's happening quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends on where you're at in the world to be able to notice that. If you're in the Midwest or the South, you're seeing it. You see it happen. If you go into a retailer shop, you can see it on the on-premise. You go to a bar or an on-premise account, and now you'll actually see THC in the menu for options that you can drink. It's not just beer, wine, and spirits anymore. It's now non-alc and THC. So there's a new category forming right in front of us, and it's forming fast. And a lot of the spirits people are behind. They're still trying to understand what this is and how people do it and how you go to market with it. But ultimately, it's great for the consumer. And I think alcohol consumption is down, right? There are markets, Minnesota and some other ones, where cannabis consumption is outpacing and beating your alcohol consumption. And people are finding other uses. But does that mean that the alcohol industry is at the headwinds to the point of disaster? I don't think so at all. You look at the alcohol industry, and it's a massive ocean. And the cannabis is now taking a bucket out of it, but that will grow. That will certainly grow. So how does spirits evolve? I think that, like you said, I think that's a whole nother discussion. But it's certainly interesting. But right now, what we're seeing is consumers are reaching for something different. And that's why we're putting out a THC beverage, so we can provide consumers with that option that they're looking for.
Quickly, we don't have a huge amount of time. And by the way, folks who have questions, I know some have come through already. Please send them through, and we'll try and get to as many as we possibly can. Is it an age thing, Chris, in terms of the curiosity, the propensity to purchase non-alcoholic beverages, particularly the infused stuff, or does it run the gamut?
I think a large part of the consumers, from what I'm seeing, is younger demographic, but you get more the curious consumer that is more your millennials and above. And if those people have a good experience, they'll come back and they'll reach for that. So, but yeah, the people who are more open to just trying it right away are from what I'm seeing, is younger. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So we've got 420 coming up. I guess this is the pseudo 420 edition of Surf Sessions. Thank you for being on. What are some of the things you guys are doing at Wyld to maximize 420 success? Maybe not just 420 success, but just around holidays and peak times of consumption. Just share some of maybe the practices you've implemented this year to take advantage of 420 and perhaps some of the other strategies and tactics you employ for other big sales events.
Yeah, I think from Wyld's lens, we're always on sales mode, and we don't treat it much differently, other than making sure we're supporting our retailers and our partners there. And I think that's the way we step up and work the hardest, is to making sure that we give them the assets they need, whether it's digital or print, that we provide them the support they need, making sure they have proper inventory, but taking care of the bud tenders. I mean, that is a difficult day and difficult week. And we need to be a good partner in making sure that they feel our support. So that's the way we're showing up the most. If you take care of your customer, you take care of your business, and that is what we want to make sure the retailers do know. But yeah, we're always on sales mode. So to us, it's no different.
Just like the sales team here, Chris, we're always on sales mode over here at
Yep.
Surfside. I love that. I can empathize and I fully understand. Uh, yeah, I mean, look, having a great national footprint, having some great retail partners, having a digital focus, having the bud tender training. You guys don't plan for 420 3 weeks in advance, obviously, which is a good thing. And hopefully the industry can get ahead of some of this in the future and really sort of adhere more to what you're sharing there of having marketing calendars and planned in advance and not having necessarily last minute plans. But anyway, I'll move on. A couple of questions, Chris, are coming in here. First one is from Farrell. We carry your product in Washington. I was going to say Western Australia. We carry your product in Washington and admire your social media footprint. We get this one really regularly, and we deal with this every day at Surfside as well. Missteps on social, issues with social, I guess, is the question. And have you had issues? I'm sure you have. And how have you maybe countered some of those?
Yeah, I mean, we deal with missteps there, and some of it we feel like we're following the guidelines and what you can and can't say on social, but we still get conflict there, and whether they temporarily take our social away or take it down. We do see that, and we have to work with whether it's Meta or wherever else that we're working with to making sure that we get it back. But we've also made several different Wyld accounts, and so we can communicate if there's issues. And but really, we try to be as diligent and thoughtful as possible, and cautious as well, because we do see the importance of our digital and our social accounts, and we need to make sure those are live. But I'm hoping that we can continue to build off of that. But even companies like us, we do face issues with it.
I would assume you'd have, well, do you have a little less of a challenge that it's an edible versus, I mean, I know if you see someone like consuming, smoking, vaping, you're
Right.
just gone. Is it a little less challenging for you guys or it's kind of the same?
It's still been a headache. Yeah, I mean, it's still been challenging, and I understand it too. From that we need to make sure we create an environment that is safe for consumers, and that's really what the restrictions are largely for, is making sure that you're advertising to the right age groups and that you're not suggesting use that can put anybody at harm. So I understand the protective nature of taking down posts or taking down accounts, but we certainly get it too. Like we experience it, I should say, from the issues, and it's happened to us several times. And it does impact the kind of content that we put out, right? If you look at our social, we make sure that we are cautious on what we put out.
Well, I mean, there's one of the reasons Surfside came into existence is that, going back to 2018 when the business was started, I mean, couldn't do anything at all anywhere on these platforms. I mean, they're slowly opening up. Funnily enough, LinkedIn's the most open one. And we've got increasing amounts of customers who we've been working with for long periods of time, short periods of time, that work with us, with programmatic, they work with us commerce media, but they're all asking about Meta and, what can we do on Instagram, and is TikTok a thing? And yeah, I mean, it's sort of a minefield. But to your earlier point about evolution, I think there's a slow, maybe glacial evolution of those platforms. Google search is one that they've opened up without officially
Yeah.
opening up the ability to do it. So fingers crossed, we see some faster improvement than glacial in that regard. But Farrell, thank you for that question. Donna's asking about New Jersey. Are you guys selling in Jersey right now?
Yeah, we've expanded. So we are opening up more markets, and have grown out there. And so we are Northeast kind of takeover was late last year. Yeah.
Awesome. What's some retailer? I can't think off the top of my head. What retailers would Donna go to? Do you know? I'm putting you on the spot now. In
And
Jersey.
no spot for that. But no, if they email me directly, I can get a good list of accounts that we're in the Northeast area. Yeah.
Nice. I know on your website too, you've got a pretty good map there, which is has many pins on it, with all the hundreds and hundreds of locations around the country you're sold at. Thanks for those questions. We are at time, so we'll leave it there. Thank you everyone for joining. And Chris, thank you so much, mate, for joining. Thanks for your insights and sharing some of your journey and some of the tips and tricks for all the folks out there that are looking to improve what they're doing in terms of their marketing, advertising, customer acquisition. So really appreciate your time and sharing all of that today.
Thank you for having me. This was great. I'd love to answer more questions as they come. Feel free to get me connected, but I appreciate everyone's time.
Awesome. Well, folks, can they find you on, is LinkedIn a good place to find you, Chris?
Yes, that is.
So
Yeah.
find Chris on LinkedIn, Chris Joseph, and Chris might get you back down the track. We'll talk a bit more about maybe the Bev Alk stuff.
Yes, I'd love that.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, mate. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you on the next surf session. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.